Welcome to the Art of Growth in our Enneagram panel season on the 9 love languages. This episode is the Enneagram Type 1 panel. If you are enjoying this series and are inspired to pursue more and deeper connections in your life, we've got something awesome coming up. This September starts our next group coaching series on the art of connection. In this 9-week journey, we will guide you collectively to acquire awareness and skills that will enhance connections in your life. Take this opportunity to invest in you, your relationships, and in the community you are a part of. It kicks off the beginning of September, so be sure to go to theartofgrowth.org/group coaching to sign up today before it fills up. And now, today's episode.
Okay, welcome to the Type 1 9 Love Languages podcast. I'm really excited to be here with our panel, and we're going to be looking at how we receive love, the ways we resist love, all of that. And the reason for that is because Jim and I were talking about this early in the year, that there's an epidemic of loneliness in the world, and all of us are affected by it. And that loneliness is increasing, not decreasing, it seems at least. And a lot of it has to do with the exchanges we have with one another, where you can be in a crowd of people and still feel lonely, or you can be with one person and not feel lonely. At times, you can be by yourself and not feel lonely. So we have all kinds of experiences, not just being around people, but it's something that happens in the dynamic, the exchange with another person that helps us to feel connected. And what we want to do is kind of unpack that, talk about the ways we have experienced that and ways that we're growing to lean more into it by intention and not just simply by accident we felt connected. So I would love to, first of all, get to know you a little bit more. So if you would introduce yourself, tell us where you're from.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm from Tampa, Florida.
I'm Cody. I'm from Toronto, Ontario.
David. I'm from Pepperell, Massachusetts.
All right. Fantastic. We have a little bit of geographic diversity here. That's always good. It's great. I love about these panels is we always bring people together who don't know each other. And same type, different instinctual stacking, and from different parts of the country, sometimes the world. So it's really exciting to get these perspectives. All right. Well, let's begin with the first question. In what ways are you seeking love?
For myself, at least, I think where I currently am at, I think I really look for love specifically from the people that I've invested in. That makes any sense. Like my close friendships, my spouse, the people that I really let into, a more transparent, deeper connection where I don't feel like I, have to be anything, have to really do anything to instantly feel that connection. I can just go there and speak my mind or say where I'm at, and I know it'll be received and understood. I know in the past it's a little different. I think trying to define that and be more intentional about that, I think that was, more my journey in the past. And, I think I had maybe earlier on, more of a transactional approach where I was basically like trying to come off as having the answers or having the right way of doing things in a way to kind of get approval from people. The older I get, the less of that is there. More where I know where I can get it, and I'm not trying to get it from everyday interactions, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. In the past, I'm a fixer, so I definitely am like, use me as a resource. And now I am able to fight against that a little bit more. And I agree. I'm searching for love in the form of connection and acceptance from the people I like being around.
And it's through your actions, your doing. What is it through?
The fixing is definitely through actions and doing. The type of love that I'm seeking is a more like non-judgmental, like safe space, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really a words of affirmation or acts of service type of person. So like quality time is really big for me. And that's usually more of like an emotional connection.
Okay.
I guess I would agree to a certain extent. I feel like for me, the big change was when I became a parent, because in those situations, you're really not getting much back. You're giving a lot and you're not really getting a lot back at the start. So that changed a lot of things for me. It was a different way of understanding what love is. And I would agree with Cody on acts of service. That kind of drives me crazy when people try to do stuff for me. It doesn't really make me feel good necessarily, but I do appreciate words of affirmation quite a bit. And I've been an educator for 20 years, and I have in my desk at work a stack of cards and notes from students or coworkers, because now I am a school administrator. And so I work with a lot of teachers and I get notes from them all the time. Just an appreciation of things I've done for them. So yes, a lot of that is action oriented. It's things that I've done. And again, like fixing, right? Like helping to make a situation better in some way, shape, or form.
And that is interesting with the sexual instinct being dominant in you, Lisa. And that seems to be consistent for type 1s who have that as their dominant instinct, is that words of affirmation do make a big difference and they do seek them out. But other type 1s, not as much. So that's interesting to observe that.
Yeah, I'm self-pres and I'm very much like, just let me do it. Just, you can offer and that's your offer means the world, but I'm good.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of interesting because it depends. Like, I think words of affirmations matters to me from the people that have deep value to me, if that makes any sense. Like, for them, my words of affirmation would go a long way. That being said, I would say generally words of affirmation does make me uncomfortable, even if I know I need it. It's just the idea of trying to be a little more present and accepting of that intentionally, knowing that people are seeing me, they're recognizing me for who I am, and that's a good thing. So it's good to accept that and internalize it.
Yeah, I agree. I think when someone, if they're giving me affirmation in the sense of like, I understand you, I'm all for it. But like a compliment from someone that doesn't really know me is hit or miss.
I agree with that. Like from someone else, it probably doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, it just doesn't have as much meaning.
Yeah.
I've heard that from a lot of type 1s who, when it comes to someone that they respect, that's a different thing. When it's someone that, gives them affirmation, but it's like their friends, like I've heard a lot of type 1s say, yeah, my friends will say, great job, you did it. It's like, yeah, it doesn't really do much for me. But it's when it's like someone who's in a position of authority, someone who has demonstrated competency in a particular skill set, when they give the feedback, positive feedback, then type 1s can receive it. So that's part of like the receptivity of love. It's like, okay, it gets narrowed to that bandwidth.
Well, I'm wondering, since I heard a few things about where you want the love to come from, and you're specific about that, are there certain things you do to keep that love coming from those sources?
For sure. On my part, yeah. Something I'm trying to be cognizant about, because I think it can be a good thing, but in the same wave of like fixing, I like to keep the peace. And that is present in a lot of my relationships, because that's a little bit how I'm like seeking love or like value almost. Like when I can make sure that everyone's like happy or good, then I like keep doing those actions to keep receiving that outcome, even if it's not like verbal. Like watching the people that I care about succeed and knowing that I took a part in that is pretty impactful for me.
What do you mean by value there?
Like why they'd keep me around.
So it's an earning. That's good. That's pretty honest. It's an earning of your way there. Like there's an immediate like clamming in there. I can feel it. But like, oh boy, I've just exposed my soul here, which is great. I'm glad you did.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It absolutely is. Yeah. So it does feel like an earning of your keep.
Yeah, for sure. Because
you
like
say that
said,
that's a no kidding.
Like a given, yeah.
Of course. Is there anything else?
Well, like we said earlier, there's a lot of give and take. So like that's kind of like one of the things that I bring to the table in a way. But it feels really transactional to say it like that.
But that's how we become honest and real with ourselves, is to recognize in the ways that, we're all doing it, noticing areas where that is still very transactional. It's like I'm earning my way there, or in some cases, I'm stealing love where I can steal it. It depends on, personality types, but yeah, I appreciate that.
I can relate to that. And I would say, like, a caveat, a lot of people that are really have a lot of value in my life right now. I've established relationships for over 20, 30 years. And so I would say in the earlier stages of pursuing those relationships, seeing that there's some commonality there, some common ground, from my end, it just felt like a lot of work. Like I was really trying to put myself out there because I valued them, or at the beginning, I felt like I valued them more than they valued me, And so I'd work really, really hard to make sure they understood I'm intentional, I'm present, I'm here, I'm listening. When are you available? Like super, like overtly proactive and feeling like I was responsible for the friendship.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, and that, honestly, it was a testament to my friends I have, was it took like things that should have broken, where I thought could have broken the connection, and seeing them still stuck around. And I'm like, oh, you actually like me. Okay, maybe I can relax a little bit. And I've gotten, it's funny, is in some periods of my life, if I feel like someone's being flaky, I will flat out challenge that relationship right out. Just be like, okay, what's this relationship made up? Wham, here's a statement that might be offensive.
Okay.
And that's another part of that transactional thing that I've kind of grown out of as well, or tried to intentionally grow out of, is that whole need to like, well, all right, we've been friends for 2 years. Let's see what this is made of. Boom, here's a statement.
And it's funny because that kind of is in line with the whole, like, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things that the one brain or like type usually resonates with. And I find that too when it comes to like opinions on things. And I've had to challenge myself to not be expecting an answer when I ask someone a question that's like challenging.
I'm trying to figure out, are you all talking about like friendships, romantic relationships? What sort of circumstances are we talking about here?
All of the above.
I think what's interesting is where you take it. Like when you hear that, what comes to mind for you? What kind of experiences?
I've been married for 16 years. And I've known my husband for 18 years. And I've worked in the same place for almost just as long. So, I mean, I've got a lot of really long-term relationships going on here. So, yeah, I mean, there are definitely times where it's sort of like you kind of put up a boundary of some sort for some people to see like what happens, what's going to happen. Are you going to cross the line and still be interested in being my friend? Yeah, no, I can see myself having done that in the past for sure with some people. And sometimes it's worked out and sometimes it has not. And that's just severed and it's done and it's over and that's it. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to explore. So again, we don't always know. Sometimes these questions are part of what helps us to be in the moment and recognize there's still more learning. There's still more to be understood, and that there are different experiences. I mean, if we got to get 3 sevens in this space, we'd have 3 different experiences and 3 different approaches to love, which is why we're saying it's more interesting to hear how you go about receiving love versus saying, how do ones go about receiving love?
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. And again, we can always revisit some of these other questions. So in what ways do you resist love? And then again, think back to your past and all the way to this present moment.
I can say for myself, physical affection is very challenging. My friends make fun of me all the time because, and I tell them it's because I'm a genius, guys. In Mensa, when you go to the convention, you have to wear a tag that indicates your openness to hugs. And mine would say, I am not interested in your hugs. Thank you very much. But no, thank you. Like, just not, that's not me. Although I have to say, being a parent, that's shifted a bit because children need that from you. So I have been very cognizant of that. So the last 12 years of my life have been full of physical affection that has felt a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. But with that being said, I do now recognize that for some people that is really, really important. And so I will make an effort to do that if I know that it matters to somebody who matters to me. Like some of my coworkers, for example, like I said, I've worked with them for like 18 years. There are some I know if I go to do like a follow-up meeting after a classroom observation, if I don't give them a hug, they're going to think that I'm mad at them and everything is horrible and wrong. So I have to do it. I have to suck it up and just do it, and that I've been reflecting on this a lot. I think sometimes I resist the physical affection because it really does bring up a lot of emotion for me whenever I do.
Mm.
And I don't know if you guys do the same thing, but for me, a lot of times I will not know I'm having a feeling until I have some sort of physical thing happen. Right. So I'll feel something in my stomach and then I'll say, what is that? Do I
100%.
have food poisoning or am I nervous? I've literally had this experience before. I'm like, I don't know what this is. So, or I'm crying, but why am I crying? I don't know why. But I feel like the physical affection kind of breaks through some of that and forces me to have an emotional response.
Yeah, I agree. I also am definitely guilty of like, if I'm upset and someone goes to hug me, I'm like, don't hug me, it'll make it worse. Like I'll cry more or I'll be more upset.
Mm-hmm.
But like, ultimately that's probably what I want in that moment. It's going to bring too much emotion with it.
Mm. And what's the threat in that if there's too much emotion?
I mean, partially like safety, I guess, like emotional safety. And probably also, the need that I feel to like kind of always be together or like have a handle on myself. So when I have like an outpour of emotion, like tears, I'm like, this needs to stop. It needs to stop right now.
Yeah.
A loss of control.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. You guys say loss of control, and that actually makes sense now. To me, it's not so much worried about the emotions. I don't know. I have a really hard time with physical affection, but it's circumstantial. Again, the same thing. Like with my wife, I'm very affectionate. With my kid, I'm very affectionate. But for some reason, with anyone else, I'm more of a personal space kind of guy. And I actually it's funny because I needed to become aware of the fact that I'd had this whole like, don't touch me thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Until one time, as someone pointed out, actually made me laugh and it made me aware of it was, we're basically saying bye to some friends that are moving out of state. And then they asked for a hug and I hugged them. And my buddy was like, oh, you're one of those like hug with like a foot of space between both of your chests kind of guy, right? Like I'm leaning forward like this, like there's got to be at least a foot gap between us when we hug because it's just awkward otherwise, It made me burst out laughing. And then I actually became cognizant of it, almost like too self-aware. Then I was like, now should I, let's just slowly move in closer for this.
It just makes it worse.
It makes it worse. And then I'm like, get so weirded out. I'm like, all right, we're just don't hug, please. But what's funny is recently I went through something really tough and a really close friend of mine just came up to me and just gave me a hug and kissed me on the forehead, which to me was kind of like, it was funny was because I felt so raw in that moment and I just felt like I needed help.
Mm-hmm.
I accepted it without thinking.
Wow.
I just went there and I was okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, but one of my closest friends, my buddy, closest friends I've ever had. And so, everyone in the group laughed, but it actually meant something to me. And it was actually almost illuminating that moment. It's like, wow, that actually was the help I needed.
It's beautiful.
I love that.
And instantly my walls didn't go up. They actually went down.
Yeah.
Which was, to me, was like in that moment, you like it. And then 5 minutes later, you're like, wait a minute. I accepted a hug.
Yeah.
And I liked it. Yeah.
And I liked it. Right. I liked it. Right.
That is absolutely beautiful. I want to underscore that because that's the moment of connection without thought, without self-consciousness. And those are the accidental connections that I'm at the front end. I said, we want to make those intentional because something happened there. There's an exchange and it's worth exploring that story, digging in, reflecting on it, because more will come. But it's in that moment of total, like, I need help, that space where we are the most receptive oftentimes to love. So yeah, it's beautiful.
I feel like David touched on this, but I am really particular on my physical touch. I really like it from certain people, but like strangers or people that I'm not very close with, I'm definitely like the anti-hug. Like someone said to me once, like, I think this is our first hug. And I was like, oh, I feel so bad. Like I'm so awkward.
Yeah, there's a connection between, I've heard this from body types many times, that the body-heart connection is so close that is oftentimes where the connection or the two will meet is, it's in the body, it's through the physical. So I appreciate hearing that from each of you. Anything else around the ways you resist love? So a lot of it has been around the physical and sometimes words of affirmation too, depending upon who it's coming from. Any other ways that you find yourself resisting love?
I mean, personally, I'm fiercely independent. So asking for help is a big one.
Mm,
And then accepting the help after that.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the resistance about when it comes to help?
I just don't want to inconvenience anybody.
Okay. What if they've said to you that they want to? It's a joy for them. What happens?
It's hard to believe.
It's hard to believe. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what the task is, obviously, but yeah, sometimes it's hard to believe.
Okay. We're putting some names to this stuff. Like, that's the resistance, is I don't believe.
Yeah. When someone goes out of their way for you, like, that's really meaningful. And sometimes that's not always like exactly what they'd want to be doing, but they'll do it for you because they care about you. And that's the gray area that I don't really like.
Okay.
There's almost a conditional statement in there, for me at least. And I'll say it this way, like, I don't actively go out asking for help, but the funny thing is, and my wife has caught me, sometimes just, basically managing more than I should probably because I'm not asking for help. And there does come like a threshold where if I feel like I'm handling and juggling too much, where if someone I trust comes by and says, hey, let me help you with that, you seem to be carrying too much, I'd be like, at that point, it's like, yes, please, thank you, here you go. And I had a friend of mine once comment that is funny because when people, come to asking me for help, I'm strangely know exactly what I need help in. Like to the detail, like I can call it out. Like I can need help. This needs to look like this. If you could do this, it'd be great. Fantastic. And I do a lot of project management at work. Like I don't have a problem with delegating. It's more realizing that sometimes people are just coming along just to help. And, don't just, give them this component because it's a nice little compartmentalized component you can just hand to them and be like, here you go, take it, but be like, hey, well, how much are you willing to take on? Like, is this too much to you? I don't want to inconvenience you. So that whole inconveniencing, that's a big, big part of it too. But yeah, I think when people do offer help, I tend to welcome it.
I think for me, I'll accept help from certain people. Like my husband, I would let him do whatever he wanted to do. And even though there are times when he does things not the way I would want them done, I have figured out it's probably best just to not say anything about that. I'm just going to say thank you and move on because that just keeps everybody happy. And he definitely shows his love through acts of service. So there you go. I let him show me that he loves me. But if I'm thinking about other people in my life, I think sometimes, kind of like what Cody was saying, like you don't believe that they want to help you. Sometimes I don't trust them to actually help me because I've had situations where, kind of like you're saying, David, where I've had too much. I've been drowning and I've asked for help. People have said, oh, yeah, we'll help you. And then they just don't fulfill what they say they're going to do. And then that kind of leaves me in a larger lurch because now I've got to scramble to figure out how to get these things done. So I think for me, it's hard to trust people to do things because I've been let down in that way.
Yeah, it's almost like a little bit vulnerable to rely on someone because if they don't pull through, then you have to figure out plan B. Whereas if you just have plan A all under your own wing,
could have just done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a project manager, I kind of had to forgo having things done my way. My earlier days, I was a little probably micromanagerial, if I was honest with myself.
Yeah.
So I realized that, yes, things got done really, really well, but people's happiness wasn't being managed really well.
Yeah.
So at that point where I was like, ooh, I got to manage their happiness as well as the tasks. All right, well, let's figure out how we can make everyone work in harmony and, lower my expectations a little bit just to make sure that we're still meeting a quality standard, but there's freedom of expression in meeting that standard. That has been more of a learning thing for me, but it's still like, again, flaky. No, thank you.
It's funny when you said managing their happiness, because I think that's something I know about myself. And I am, I guess, like fearful almost to be in a management position in the workplace because I know that that's something I would battle for sure.
But you do that, you said, with your friends, right? You want them to be happy.
Yes, but if there's things that I want done a certain way, I'll just do them myself.
Yeah.
Whereas at work, you don't always have that luxury.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And we hear that from self-professed ones who prefer doing the work themselves than managing other people to do the work. Yeah.
It's almost like I have to cover my eyes sometimes at work. Just, okay, I'm just not seeing this.
Not seeing it. Yeah.
Well, because when you're talking about these resistances, I'm trying to like see a pattern in it, and it's what there's the accepting help or being able to take this or being able to receive a hug from someone, and it's almost like you have to check in, and then it's on your terms whether or not you feel like it's right to accept.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's conditions. Yeah.
Or like, Lisa, you mentioned this earlier, like you'll accept something from your husband and you have to kind of like reset your expectations. So if I'll accept an action or a task to be completed by someone, I have to be like, okay, they're going to do it their way and it will still get done and it will be fine.
That's right.
So is there any place where it bypasses that? I mean, your experience, David, seemed to bypass some of that mechanism. It seems to me like the heart center is really the issue here. It's like body center, it's control, right? And the mechanism of the head is the evaluation part. That's what it does. It evaluates. So you've got both going on. And then there's like, and that's the entry point to finally getting to the heart center where it's like, I can receive, I can accept, I can take that in. Maybe a better question is, does it bypass? When does it bypass all of that for you and get right to your heart?
I think like when it sneaks up on you, like similar to what David said about the physical touch thing, when someone does something that they think you might need, that I think that bypasses it for me.
That's true.
Like if I don't have to ask.
Yeah. You know, if a friend of mine just shows up and says, hey, I did this for you. Like the qualifiers, the quantifiers, all the mechanisms aren't there. Like it bypasses security systems to put that.
Yeah. And it also is like when we were talking earlier about seeking love, like it kind of bypasses the why did they do this kind of feelings. Like it's like you feel really seen and you're just like, oh wow, this person really cares about me. Thank you so much.
So it's not transactional on their end. They actually did it from that place of genuine love.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about it. I just, you know, because I feel like we're always, well, at least, you know, myself, I'm always quantifying things in some way. But it's almost like if someone does something for you, just without, you know, being asked, just do it. You know, it's almost like, this is going to sound dangerous, but the quality of their work is not as important as the fact that you immediately recognize the gesture.
Yes.
That's a real interesting one for me as not a one to listen to that, to hear this. Like, wow, I have to compute that for a moment. Yeah.
There's a performance analysis going there instantly.
Yeah.
I know exactly what I'm asking to do and I know exactly what I expect in return.
Yes.
And if it doesn't fall within a certain criteria, if it's out of that range, then it goes into you're not dependable.
Yeah.
Basically territory, which is not good territory to be in.
Yeah. If it's something that you weren't expecting and you never analyzed, it doesn't matter how small or large the action or gesture is. It just feels very genuine. And you're like, oh, this is nice.
And that's the way it does bypass these other mechanisms.
If I can convince myself that it's a low stakes situation, it really doesn't matter that much how well this is done, as long as it's done, then it's okay for somebody else to help, right? Like if I care too much about how something is done or what the outcome is, then I get way too wrapped up in managing it all, kind of like the micromanaging that you were talking about. And I think for me, in a lot of areas of my life, I have figured out that bypass method. Like I just, not that I want to say I lower my standards because internally they're never actually lowered, but I'm able to convince myself that it's okay. It's going to be fine. It's going to be all right. And don't worry about it too much.
Yeah.
And then that seems to help a lot. Right? Because even talking about like my husband doing things for me, if it's like, I know the things are going to be folded in a way that I just really absolutely hate, but it's okay. It's all right.
Well, I think a key piece of it is also like, if I don't have to watch it, if I don't have to watch them do it quote unquote wrong.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the scale that you bring in, Lisa, because it does make a big difference, right? If it's
Yeah.
like, imagine any of you, like someone's doing something and the scale of it is, deeply impactful to your life. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's even if they're doing it from a place of they weren't asked, they want to do it just for you, but it
Mhm.
impacts you in a significant way. Yeah, well, then that
Yeah.
changes things. You want it done right. You're going to want to be
Mhm.
involved in that process. But if it's low stakes, then it's a little less so. But I appreciate how you're working at like, how do I lower the evaluative mechanism in my head and then the body's
Yeah.
sense of control? How do I
Yeah.
lower that expectation so that I can access the heart center that receives the love that's coming in
Yeah.
my direction?
And I think too, having been a teacher for a long time, I had to get really comfortable with letting other people kind of do their own thing because I can't learn for you. You have to do some of this yourself. So I think that's part of it too, is letting go of that control. I don't have to be responsible for every little thing that happens here. I've got my job. That's my job. And then everybody else has their own job, and let everybody else do their job. And so I think that's been a big part of it too, is just recognizing, where are my boundaries? Like this is me and that's you. So you go do you and I do me. And that helps a lot too, for me to be able to say, that's not mine, that's yours. And I have to stay here where I am and let you figure it out. And if you need me, I'm here, I'll help you. And I'll probably know what to do, but you've got to figure that part out yourself. And that's been part of my work with teachers as well, is not walking in and saying, okay, I'm going to solve all your problems for you right now. It's more of conversations about, well, how do you think this is working? And, where do you see things aren't working well?
Yeah,
what do you
great.
think we could do about that?
Yeah, really good.
I have no idea. And then I say, well, what if we tried this? And then, okay. So it's sort of just, not taking on every issue as if it were my own personal responsibility.
Yeah.
I really relate to that one. I'm the oldest of 6. So I constantly am like, I can't learn this for them. I can't do it for them.
I'm also the oldest child.
Oldest of 5.
Oh,
There were
look at
3
that.
oldest. Look at that.
How funny.
And immediately the theorist out there would be like, I wonder if all firstborns are type 1s. But the answer is no.
Probably not.
Definitely not.
Yeah. This is really good. Let's move on, because you've already started answering the third question, but please, add more to this. In what ways are you learning to receive love?
Something that I've been actively trying to practice and kind of been smacked in the face with is, rather than jumping to conclusions about what the outcome is going to be, if I have to address something with someone that upset me, or tell someone something that I think they might not want to hear, or whatever it might be, rather than assuming that I already know what their answer is going to be and that it is going to be negative, just going into it with more of an open mind. And 99% of the time, I'm surprised by the reaction that I get, because it's not nearly as difficult or challenging or negative as I think it's going to be. And letting those people in my life show up for me and understand me and be open to having conversations about the type of person that they are and the type of person that I am, the things that mean a lot to them, things that mean a lot to me, etc.
For the most of my life, I always assume any kind of confrontation or any kind of vulnerable transaction is going to turn out negatively. I don't know why that mechanism is always there. And this fact is taking me, like you said, just being like, I don't know where it's going to go. Just let it go where it's going to go. The being intentional about that, being very, very mindful, very, very present about that. Yeah, to be open to where it goes. And honestly, most of the time, it's like, I'd say 80% positive. But I think we are always framing how we're going to say things. The nervousness is if I don't frame it right, if I don't put all my due diligence in making sure the perfect words are chosen that articulate imperfectly what I mean, and this is going to go terribly. If I stutter once, this thing's going off the rails.
Wow.
It's a lot of pressure. And actually, my wife, who is the 7, called it out. She's like, do you realize how much pressure you put on yourself to speak? And I'm like, can you say more about that? And she really called it out. And she's like, just say what you have to say. What's the worst that can happen? And then I realized that mechanism was there, and just being intentional just to be
Mm.
The intentionality, the work's already been put in. Just be real, be transparent. You're always thinking about these things and how you relate to people and how you word things. So just say it. Just let it out there.
Cody, since you led off with this, how are you connecting this to receiving love?
Like allowing people to show up for me, basically. So I can give you an example. Like in my career path, there's a blend between friendship and career. And I had to have a candid conversation recently with my friend about our overlap with work. And I was so worried about, how personal she was going to take it. And she was like, yeah, I'm not fazed at all. It's your job. And I was like trying to frame, like thinking about how I'm going to frame it and trying to like be sympathetic towards like how it affects her. And like I put so much thought into this, how I want to frame this conversation and how she might feel. And she was like, yeah, it's not a big deal. Like it's work. And I was like, I really overthought that. And it also didn't take a toll on my friendship, which was what I was expecting to happen.
Yeah. Did you see the connection, David, when you were?
Yeah, I saw a connection, and that's probably why I jumped in. I saw that it was in that, and I can't help but think maybe in the past where, I had to say what I had to say to preserve the connection, to preserve the friendship, to lay some kind of healthy boundary, or to do something where I put so much negative work, let's put it that way, into avoiding the situation because I really, really did thought that was going to sever a connection, or that they would have something really hurtful to say in return.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. That was the issue for both of you, was the losing of the relationship. So interesting, because I would not have tracked like Jim. I was like, how did you get from there? And then it just was like, is it about losing the relationship? Is that the thing that's underneath that for both of you? Okay.
Yeah. And I think for me, at least, it kind of comes back to the like keeping the peace thing.
Yeah.
For me, being more emotionally vulnerable has been part of it. Just allowing people to see me have emotions, telling people how I feel, which is difficult. I think partially because of what David was saying, like you got to put it in the right words. And if you don't put it in the right words, then what's going to happen, right? Are people going to misunderstand? And then is that going to lead to something that we didn't want, an unintended outcome? But truthfully, I think for me, a big breakthrough was we had a meeting at the start of the school year, and we were talking about like a teacher mentoring program. And it was something that I was developing. And I shared about, I guess, how lonely I was my first year of teaching. I felt like I didn't have any support or anyone standing behind me. And I might get emotional now, actually. One of my coworkers, who we've worked together for 18 years. She and I ended up sharing a classroom that year, and just having her there in the room, even though she wasn't like in a formal sense my mentor teacher, she held my hand. We worked together. We did a lot of stuff together. And I was just sharing with everyone how it was so important that I had that person, because if I hadn't had her, I don't know if I would have stayed in this career. I think I probably would have quit because it was hard. And you feel like you're standing out there alone most of the time. It's me against 30 kids, and it's hard. But having another person who was around and was not far from you and who was going to help you figure things out, and you could lean on each other, and there's no judgment. It was just like, we're going to figure this out together. And in talking about that and kind of what my vision was and what I really, really wanted for all of our new teachers to have, I got emotional and I actually cried. And after the meeting, one of our teachers, who, God bless this man, he's almost 80 years old. And yet he still like retires. And then every couple of years he comes back to start teaching again. I don't know what he's doing, but at any rate, he's beautiful and wonderful. And I love him so much. And he came out to me and he goes, "Hey, listen, I've known you for a long time. And I feel like I finally know you because of that." He's like, "Wow. I felt like I never knew you, but now I feel like I do."
So nice.
Wow.
Right. So,
Awesome.
I think that was kind of a breakthrough moment for me, because at home, I'll express emotions pretty freely. That's not an issue. But on the job, that seems like a boundary that, no, there's kind of like what you're saying, Cody, is like, there's got to be some difference between my friends and my coworkers. Like, they occupying the same space feels really weird. And sharing that part of myself feels really weird. But I'm finding that it's actually making me feel or seem, I guess, more like a human being, and that's good. So I guess I should just keep doing that.
How did you feel in that? It related to the connectedness. How did you feel?
I felt like I was seen. I felt like somebody understood, like he said, like he felt like he knew me. I felt understood. I felt like, oh, okay. I don't know. It's a strange thing too. Like having been a teacher, like showing emotional vulnerability with students was always hard too. But in times where I just couldn't avoid it, it made you feel really connected with them. It made it feel like, this is a group of people who I can be myself. I don't have to be something else. I don't have to be just so, I guess. Like, I don't want to say perfect because that's not exactly right. But as a teacher, there's a certain standard you're supposed to meet. I'm supposed to be like this. And I fell short of that, but it kind of made me better. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of feel the same way, like taking off that mask of like being really put together. I feel like I can't really name a time where that didn't benefit me, but it is really hard to do.
Yeah.
With my family, with my friends, in relationships, at work.
And I've told some people this. I said, I think this is like, it's kind of the secret is all the emotions are just right there under the surface. It's so easy just to like poke it a little bit and then they all just leak out. Like it's all right there, right? Like the love is all right there. Like my kids do something like something silly, something whatever. And it's just, it just overflows. Like you can't help it. It's all right there. And it's just barely being contained. Yeah. And then something small just pushes it over. And that's it. It's just there. It's been there the whole time. We're just trying to so hard to
conceal it.
Yeah. Keep it. Yeah. Keep it in.
Yeah. This is good. This is the path towards receptivity, is that ability to be open.
Yeah.
And working against that, however it's described by the various type ones, trying to be perfect, trying to be just so, trying to be enough, trying to, live up to a standard. It comes out in so many different ways. Language is a difficult thing to name sometimes what's happening underneath, but to be able to be authentically who you are in that moment and have a positive response from people around you. And it works against the other path, because the other way that you go about it is you're trying to make connection. You're trying to earn your way there. Cody, you began with that, the earning of your way there.
Yeah. And it's funny because I feel like we've all reiterated that we've put so much work into earning that, but we've all received it in the most simple, vulnerable ways.
Yeah.
It's almost like when you stop trying to be what you think you're supposed to be and you just be who you are, there it is.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way to put it. Yeah.
Wow.
The way I look at it is like expectation management. Like it's easy to project that expectation on things getting done and the people around you. But when you analyze the expectation of yourself, it's like, no, I'm just supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you constantly analyze it in a positive way, not just a negative expectation way, but also a positive way. It's like, hey, I'm here. I'm leading this team, like gotta be myself. I gotta present the version of myself that's me.
Yeah. There's a lot of risk to that for all of us. That's why we don't do it as often. And just aware of that. Like the ego, which is our protective part, is going to keep us doing the work of the type 1 in your case.
Yeah.
Earning your way, working hard, trying to live up to a certain standard, doing more for others than they do for you. And that's the protective part. Because there's a threat. What if you open up and you're viewed and seen, and instead of there being acceptance and love and all that, there's kind of judgment that comes in there, and that's really hard. So yeah, I love where we are. I feel like we've landed the plane. It's right. I mean, I don't know if you feel it. I feel that like restfulness internally, and it's a good place to be. And I feel more connected to each of you. This is what humanizes all of us: is that openness, that vulnerability, that risk to be seen and to be loved as we are. So to each of you, thank you so very much for opening up, being transparent, vulnerable, and expressing your experiences around these 3 questions. I know it's a benefit, and it'll help so many others who are type 1s or in relationship with type 1s. So again, thank you to each of you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope this work of art helps you grow. Reach out to us at www.theartofgrowth.org to find out about the upcoming group coaching session, to take our free Enneagram or Instincts test, learn about individual and couples coaching, as well as our next round of certification. If you would like to see how our work can improve your corporate culture and team dynamics, email us to set up a free consultation. You can follow us on Instagram at just Art of Growth, and make sure you follow the podcast. And leaving us a review on iTunes really helps people find this work. Until next time, my friends, grace and growth.